Your water bill arrives every month. You pay it. The filter cartridge clogs every 6 months. You replace it. The membrane in your reverse osmosis system fails every 3 years. You call a plumber and you pay him too. And somewhere in an office building you will never see. An executive at a water filtration company looks at those recurring numbers on a spreadsheet and smiles. What if there was a filter that cost $50 to build, that removed 99% of bacteria from raw, untreated surface water, that lasted 25 years with no replacement parts, no electricity, and no service calls? What if over 2 million families worldwide already depend on it for their daily drinking water, and the industry selling you $1,000 systems has made sure, systematically and deliberately, that you have never heard of it? That filter exists. It has existed since before your grandparents were born. The science behind it is nearly 200 years old. It was proven in the City of London when horse-drawn carriages still outnumbered steam engines. It was adapted for household use by a Canadian engineer working with $60 and a garbage can from a hardware store. And it has been quietly buried. Not by a secret government program, not by a shadowy cabal, by something far more ordinary and far more powerful. An industry with $48 billion in annual reasons to keep you in the dark. This is the story of the BioSand filter. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why it is not sold at Home Depot. Why the water filtration industry does not want you to find out it exists. And how you could build one yourself for less than the cost of a single replacement cartridge. For that, we go back 200 years, to a river that was killing a city. The year is 1829. London is a city of roughly 1.5 million people, and it is slowly poisoning itself. The River Thames runs brown and thick with the waste of industry. Tanneries, slaughterhouses, factories of every description, sewers that empty directly into the current. And from that same brown river, the water companies of London pump drinking water to the homes of the city's growing population. The results are not just unpleasant, they are catastrophic. Typhoid fever moves through neighborhoods in waves. Cholera, though no one yet understands its mechanism, kills thousands. Dysentery is so common it barely warrants mention in the newspapers. The poor die at higher rates because the wealthy can afford water from less contaminated sources, or can boil it, or can simply drink wine and beer. The poor cannot. People understand, in a vague and terrible way, that something in the water is making them sick. They do not yet know what. They call it miasma. They think it is the bad air rising from the river. They are wrong about the mechanism, but right about the source. Into this crisis walks a civil engineer named James Simpson. He's been working for the Chelsea Waterworks Company, one of the oldest water firms in London, incorporated in 1723. And Simpson has been wrestling with a problem no engineer has yet solved. How do you clean water at a scale large enough to serve an entire city? His answer is so simple it seems almost insulting. Sand. Not a chemical process, not machinery, not anything that requires a factory or an ongoing supply of consumable reagents. Sand. Specifically, beds of gravel and fine sand layered in a precise sequence through which Thames water would slowly percolate from top to bottom, emerging cleaner from the other side. The idea came, in part, from an experimental filtration unit at a Scottish bleaching factory, built in 1804. Simpson had studied it and understood something its creators may not have fully grasped. The sand was not just filtering the water physically. Something biological was happening inside the sandbed, something alive. Simpson completed his prototype sand filter bed at the Chelsea Waterworks in 1829. It became the first treated public water supply in the world. And this is where the first open question in this story appears, the one that should be keeping you up at night. If sand filtration worked in 1829, why are you paying $5,000 for a reverse osmosis system in 2026? Hold that thought, we will come back to it. The method Simpson developed spread to other London water companies within years. And as it spread, something remarkable happened. Waterborne disease began to fall. Not immediately, not completely, but measurably, undeniably, and in direct proportion to where the sand-filtered water reached. 25 years later, in 1854, a physician named John Snow mapped every cholera death in the Soho neighbourhood of London. 500 people died in 10 days from a single contaminated pump on Broad Street. Snow's map, which became one of the most famous documents in the history of public health, proved what Simpson's filter already implied. Clean water was not a luxury. It was the difference between living and dying. Snow convinced local authorities to remove the handle from the Broad Street pump. The outbreak stopped, but here is what the history books skim past. The neighborhoods served by Chelsea Waterworks, the ones drinking sand-filtered water, had already been spared. Before Snow mapped anything, before the pump handle came off. The filter was doing its job silently, invisibly, and without recognition, because no one was tracking the neighborhoods that were not getting sick. That is how suppression works. Not with a document marked classified, but with the simple absence of attention toward things that work without creating ongoing revenue. The operating principle of Simpson's filter was simple: slow percolation of water through layered sand and the biological community that forms within it. Fundamental, proven, reproducible. So reproducible that 160 years later, a Canadian engineer would spend $60, use a garbage can from his local hardware store, and prove the exact same thing all over again. His name was David Manns, and his story is the second reason this technology never made it to your local hardware store. Dr. David Harold Manns was born in 1947 in Regina, Saskatchewan. He grew up on a farm in the Canadian prairies, which meant he grew up with something that most university professors lack: a practical understanding of the gap between what works in theory and what works when your hands are cold and the equipment you need is not available. He became a hydrology expert at the University of Calgary, working on computer simulation of water systems and resource management. Good work, important work, but work that kept him at a comfortable distance from the places where people were dying for lack of clean water. In 1988, the Canadian International Development Agency contracted the University of Calgary to send Manns to South Africa. He spent time working with the University of Zululand, studying water resource problems in communities where infrastructure simply did not exist. What he saw there did not just change the direction of his research, it changed the direction of the rest of his life. He came back to Calgary with a problem he could not let go of. How do you give clean water to a family with no pipes, no electricity, no money for replacement parts, no hardware store within 200 kilometers, and no expectation that any of those things will change in their lifetimes? The existing answers were inadequate. Chemical treatment with chlorine required ongoing supply chains that rural communities could not sustain. Boiling worked but consumed fuel, which also required supply chains. Ultraviolet light needed electricity. Commercial filters needed replacement cartridges. Every solution, without exception, created a recurring dependency on something from outside the community. The slow sand filtration technology from Simpson's era was the closest thing to a genuinely self-sufficient solution. But it had two critical flaws that had always made it impractical at the household level. The first flaw: traditional slow sand filters required constant, uninterrupted water flow. Let the sand bed dry out, and the biological layer at the top, the layer that was doing most of the actual cleaning, would die. Dead biological layers meant unclean water. And a filter that required constant flow was useless for a family drawing water intermittently across a day. The second flaw: there was no way to stop and restart the process without killing the biology. Manns spent months, then years, analyzing why previous filters had failed. Not to abandon the technology, which he recognized as fundamentally sound, but to solve those two specific failure points. In 1989, he began formal development of what he would call the BioSand filter. And in 1991, in his kitchen in Calgary, he built the first prototype for $60. A garbage can, place sand from a hardware store in Calgary, a few layers of gravel, a simple plastic outlet pipe, and one critical innovation that no one had thought to add before: a standing water column above the sand bed, maintained between uses by the geometry of the outlet pipe, that kept the biological community at the top of the sand continuously moist, even when no water was flowing through. That one insight, the standing water column, was the difference between a theoretical exercise and a technology that could save lives across 200 countries. Mans tested the prototype at Calgary's Foothills Hospital, confirmed the results at the University of Calgary, had them verified through Environment Canada and the National Water Research Institute, then took it into the field. Chile, Nicaragua, early projects in countries where clean water was not a lifestyle choice, but a survival requirement. It worked everywhere. And then, within a few years, something happened that explains precisely why you've never heard of this technology in the context of your own home. The biological layer at the heart of the BioSand filter has a German name, Schmutzdecke. It translates as dirty layer, which is one of those technical terms that is accurate, but deeply undersells what it truly is. The Schmutzdecke is not a layer of contamination, it is a layer of life. Think of it this way. When you pour water through the top of a BioSand filter for the first weeks of operation, the microorganisms that were already present in that water, ordinary environmental bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and the microscopic predators that feed on them, begin to colonize the top few centimeters of the sand. They are not invaders. They are settlers. They find the interface between the standing water column and the top of the sand bed to be an extraordinarily rich environment, moist, oxygenated, fed by a constant stream of new organic material, arriving with every pour of source water. Within 2 to 4 weeks, this community establishes itself into a stable, self-regulating ecosystem. 13 distinct types of bacteria have been identified in a mature Schmutzdecke. The dominant ones are Pseudomonas species, tough environmental bacteria that are extraordinarily efficient at consuming organic material, including pathogenic bacteria from the incoming water. This is the part the water filtration industry does not want you to sit with. Your expensive reverse osmosis membrane removes contaminants through pressure and physical size exclusion. Your Berkey elements do it through a combination of carbon filtration and, until the EPA intervened, colloidal silver. These are passive processes. The filter medium just sits there and intercepts things. The Schmutzdecke hunts. Pathogenic bacteria entering from the top of the filter meet this biological gauntlet immediately. The resident predators of the Schmutzdecke consume organic matter and the bacteria it contains as food. What survives that encounter moves down into the sand column, where physical filtration traps protozoa and parasites too large to fit between sand grains. Adsorption chemistry pulls dissolved contaminants to the surfaces of sand particles. Predatory organisms at multiple depths continue consuming whatever has managed to survive. By the time water reaches the outlet pipe at the bottom, it has passed through a living multi-stage treatment system that improves continuously with age. A brand new BioSand filter removes 80 to 90% of bacteria. After the biological community is fully established, that figure climbs to 98 to 99%. Filters that have been running for several years, where the Schmutzdecke is dense and mature, have shown 99.9% removal of E. coli in controlled studies. For Giardia and Cryptosporidium, consider what happened in Milwaukee in 1993. A single contamination event in the municipal supply gave 400,000 people severe illness. It remains the largest documented outbreak of waterborne disease in United States history. BioSand filter removal rates for both of those organisms reach 100%. These organisms are too physically large to pass through fine sand. They are simply stopped, then consumed. For iron and manganese, which discolor well water and make it undrinkable across large portions of rural America, the biological oxidation processes within the Schmutzdecke and sandbed handle both. For turbidity, the cloudiness from suspended sediment and organic particles, reduction typically runs 80 to 90%. The filter requires no electricity. It generates no wastewater. Contrast this with reverse osmosis, which wastes 3 to 4 gallons for every single gallon it filters. A household using reverse osmosis for drinking water in a drought year is pouring 3/4 of its water down the drain in pursuit of a filtered product that a BioSand filter would have delivered using every drop. The BioSand filter wastes nothing, and it requires no replacement parts. Not eventually. Not after 10 years. Not ever. The concrete or plastic container lasts decades if it is not physically destroyed. The sand and gravel do not degrade. The biological community regenerates itself continuously. The only maintenance is the water you pour in, and, every few months, a gentle scraping of the top centimeter of sand to remove accumulated solids and refresh the flow rate. $50 of materials, 25 years of clean water, 0 service calls, 0 replacement cartridges, 0 recurring cost. Now here is the question you should be sitting with. If this technology works this well, proven across 2 million installations in 70 countries, costing $50, lasting a generation, with design plans freely available for 30 years, why does no one sell it? The answer to that question is where this story gets uncomfortable. The global water filtration industry generates $48 billion in revenue annually. The home filtration segment, the part selling directly to families like yours, was valued at over $20 billion in 2024. Market analysts projected reaching $50 billion by 2033. Every year, growing at 11%, billions of dollars changing hands between people who need clean water and companies that have positioned themselves as the necessary intermediary between you and it. And that growth is not powered by superior technology. It is powered by a business model built on recurring dependency. Map it out. A point-of-use reverse osmosis system costs $2,000 to $3,000 installed under your kitchen sink. The membrane, which is the core component doing the actual separation work, fails every 2 to 3 years and costs $200 to $400 to replace. The pre-filter sediment cartridge needs changing every 6 to 12 months. The carbon post-filter needs changing annually. The system also wastes 3 to 4 gallons of water for every gallon it produces, which adds to your water bill. Run those numbers out over 20 years. You are looking at $5,000 to $8,000 in total ownership cost, minimum. And the system requires electricity to operate. It fails completely if the power goes out. A whole house reverse osmosis system runs $4,000 to $8,000 installed, not counting ongoing consumables. A Berkey system, which the homesteading community has embraced as a non-electric alternative, costs $300 to $400. The black Berkey elements are marketed as lasting 6,000 gallons per pair, but replacement pairs cost $60 to $80. And over 20 years of daily household use, you will cycle through several sets. A BioSand filter costs $50 and has no replacements. This is not a difficult business problem to understand. A product with no replacement parts and a 25-year lifespan generates exactly one transaction. One, there is no subscription, no service contract, no quarterly consumable, no reason for a customer to ever contact the company again after the initial sale. That is not a business, that is a liability. The suppression of the BioSand filter does not require a conspiracy meeting or a secret document. It requires something far simpler and far more durable. The systematic absence of economic incentive to mention it. Hardware stores stock what generates margin. Plumbers recommend what requires follow-up calls. YouTube runs ads from filtration companies, not from an open-source non-profit in Calgary. Consumer magazines accept advertising from the filtration industry. Home improvement shows partner with sponsored brands. In every channel through which you might discover a new product category, the economic interest of every party in the chain runs directly against telling you that a $50 solution exists. And then there is the regulatory dimension, which is sharper than it first appears. In 2023, the Environmental Protection Agency issued a stop sale order against Berkey water filters. The formal basis: Berkey's filter elements use colloidal silver as an antimicrobial agent, and under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, any product making antimicrobial claims must be registered with the EPA as a pesticide. Berkey, which had been the gold standard of non-electric water filtration for the prepper and homesteading community for years, was pulled from shelves. The company sued the EPA. The case wound through the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals through all of 2024 with no final resolution. Think about what that regulatory framework means for the BioSand filter. You cannot regulate a bed of sand in a concrete box. You cannot serve a stop sale order on a biological community that emerged spontaneously in your backyard. There is no FIFRA registration required for the Schmutzdecke, because the Schmutzdecke is not a product. It is not manufactured, It is not sold, it is not imported. It is a living ecosystem that arises naturally wherever the conditions are right, from the same microorganisms that already exist in the source water. The BioSand filter sits entirely outside the regulatory and commercial framework governing the water filtration industry. Not because it was designed to evade that framework, because it predates it by 150 years. It exists in a domain, the natural biology of sand and water, where industry has no purchase. This is why David Manz's invention spread across 70 developing countries, and somehow never made it to the home improvement store in your town. The Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology, known as KAWST, was founded in Calgary and grew directly from David Manz's work. Its mission is straightforward: make proven water treatment technologies freely available to the people who need them most. CAST has published the complete BioSand filter manual as a free public document. The design drawings for the concrete mold are freely downloadable. The sand specifications are published. The maintenance protocols are documented. The training curriculum is available without charge. As of current estimates, KWS and its partner organizations have helped install over 2 million BioSand filters across more than 70 countries. Studies tracking these deployments tell a consistent story. In rural Rwanda, BioSand filters have maintained functionality for 7 years, without replacing a single component. In Nicaragua, 86% of households that installed BioSand filters are still using them 8 years later. In clinical studies conducted by the University of North Carolina and the University of Nevada in Cambodia and the Dominican Republic, households with BioSand filters reported 47% fewer cases of diarrheal disease across all age groups. 47%. That is not a minor improvement in quality of life. In communities where diarrheal disease is the leading cause of childhood mortality, 47% fewer cases is the difference between children who survive and children who do not. One filter, $50, 25 years. And none of this is classified. None of it is hidden. The World Health Organization has recognized BioSand filtration as an effective household water treatment technology. The peer-reviewed literature is extensive. The evidence base has been accumulating since the early 1990s. The family in Ohio with a creek running through their property does not know this exists. The homesteader in Montana with iron-stained well water does not know this exists. The prepper in Tennessee building water independence does not know this exists. The gap between what is documented and what is discussed in the American homesteading market is not an accident of insufficient research. It is the predictable result of 30 years of marketing dollars spent by an industry with every reason to ensure the conversation never starts. The ceramic pot filter is the second technology in this story, and it deserves its moment. While the BioSand filter handles continuous household supply, the ceramic pot filter offers something different: the ability to filter water immediately in any location, with materials that exist on every continent, using a production process 10,000 years old. The basic principle: mix clay with a combustible material, fire it at high temperature, and the combustible material burns away, leaving behind a ceramic matrix riddled with microscopic pores too small for bacteria and parasites to pass through. The combustible material can be sawdust from any woodworking operation, rice husks from any agricultural processing, or any finely ground organic matter that burns cleanly. The ratio that has been refined through decades of field testing is roughly 50% clay to 50% combustible material by volume. The two are mixed dry first, then water is added to create a workable clay body. The mixture is pressed into pot-shaped molds. The formed pots dry slowly to prevent cracking, then they go into a kiln at approximately 900 degrees Celsius, sustained for 6 to 9 hours. At that temperature, the organic material combusts completely and leaves behind nothing but the pores it occupied in the clay matrix. What emerges from the kiln is a porous ceramic pot that will filter water mechanically. But the final step is what takes it from adequate to extraordinary. The fired pot is painted with or submerged in a solution of colloidal silver at a concentration of about 3.2%. Silver is absorbed into the pore walls of the ceramic. Silver ions kill bacteria on contact by disrupting their cellular metabolism. Greek and Roman physicians stored water in silver vessels for exactly this reason. Modern peer-reviewed research published in journals, including the Journal of Water and Health, has confirmed the mechanism and the efficacy. A ceramic pot filter treated with colloidal silver removes 99.99% of bacteria and over 99% of parasites from water flowing through it. Each pot costs $8 to $30, depending on local production costs. It lasts 2 to 5 years. The collection receptacle beneath it, either fired clay or food-grade plastic, lasts indefinitely. The organization Potters for Peace has established ceramic filter production facilities in more than 50 countries. They publish production protocols freely. Local potters trained in the process can produce filters for their communities from local materials, creating water security without any external supply chain. $8. Local materials, trained by a local potter, 99.99% pathogen removal. Neither of these technologies, the BioSand filter nor the ceramic pot filter, is difficult to understand. Neither requires expertise beyond what an attentive person can acquire from freely available documentation in an afternoon. Neither has any ongoing cost that requires a corporation to provide. That is precisely the problem. For them, not for you. Picture this exactly as it will happen. There is a boil notice in your county. Not a hypothetical one, a real one, issued because aging water main infrastructure has been breaching into the soil, and the contamination tests have come back positive for bacterial coliform. The notice is expected to last 3 to 5 weeks. The utility is working on it. You find out on a Tuesday morning. You drive to the grocery store. The bottled water shelves are already stripped. 2-gallon jugs, gone. 1-liter bottles, gone. Gallon jugs, 3 left on the bottom shelf, purchased by the person ahead of you in line. You drive to the next store. Same situation. You drive home with nothing. Your neighbors begin the process of boiling water. They heat pots on their stoves, wait for rolling boils, then wait for the water to cool, then pour it into containers they store in the refrigerator. It takes time. It burns through propane if they're cooking on a camp stove. It requires attention and process at every meal and every glass of water. And when the utility pushes the repair timeline back from 3 weeks to 6, the fatigue of that process becomes a real burden. You do none of that, because in your backyard, sitting on a simple wooden platform that keeps it level and allows the outlet pipe to drain cleanly into the collection container below, there is a concrete cylinder 90 centimeters tall. You mixed and poured the concrete yourself in an afternoon 14 months ago. You let it cure for 28 days. You filled it with layers of fine sand and gravel from the aggregate yard 3 miles down the road. You ran source water through it for 3 weeks while the biological community established itself. You tested the output with an E. coli test strip from the well water supply store. The reading came back clean. Since then, you have used it twice a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. You pour water in the top. Clean water flows from the outlet pipe into the collection container below. That's all you have ever done. On Tuesday morning, while your neighbors are driving from store to store looking for bottled water, you walk to the creek at the edge of your property. You fill a 5-gallon bucket, you carry it to the filter. You lift the lid and pour the bucket's contents through the diffuser plate at the top of the sand bed. The diffuser, a simple sheet of plastic drilled with 100 small holes, spreads the water gently across the surface without disturbing the biological layer below. The water begins its journey downward. It enters the Schmutzdecke first. That dense, living film of microorganisms at the top of the sand column, established over 14 months of regular use, reaches out chemically and biologically into every drop that passes through it. Pathogenic bacteria from the creek water encounter the resident predators of this community: Pseudomonas, Proteobacteria, Protozoa, Rotifers. They are consumed. And this happens in seconds, silently, invisibly, as the water seeps downward through 3 centimeters of biological film. Below the Schmutzdecke, the fine sand column begins. Each grain of sand, measured to between 0.1 and 0.25 millimeters, creates a physical labyrinth that no protozoan cyst can navigate. Giardia stops here. Cryptosporidium stops here. Sediment stops here. The iron particles that turn well water orange stop here. the water slows, spreading laterally, being held against grain surfaces by adhesion, allowing adsorption chemistry to pull dissolved contaminants from the liquid phase into the solid. The water continues downward through 50 centimeters of sand, then through 5 centimeters of coarse drainage gravel at the base, then into the outlet pipe. 20 minutes after you poured the bucket in, clean water flows from the pipe into the collection container. You fill a glass, you drink it. Not because you are brave, not because you are desperate, because you know what happened to that water between the top of the filter and the glass in your hand. You know the biology. You know the performance data from 70 countries and 2 million deployments. You know that the Schmutzdecke in your filter is the same community that has been removing pathogens from drinking water since before James Simpson built his first sand bed at the Chelsea Waterworks in 1829. You know what you built, and it works. Your neighbors, on the 3rd week of the boil notice, are still burning propane, still waiting, still hoping the utility's next press release will announce a resolution. You pour another bucket through the filter. You do not need a contractor for this. You do not need a permit to build a sand filter in a concrete box. You do not need to call a plumber or a water treatment specialist or anyone at all. What you need is the KWS BioSand filter manual, which is a free download. It contains exact dimensions for the concrete mold, specific sand grain size specifications, diffuser plate dimensions, outlet pipe diameter, and step-by-step assembly instructions. Everything in the manual has been field validated across more than 70 countries. The materials are these: Portland cement, standard type 1 or type 2, available at any hardware store. Clean gravel in 2 sizes, coarse drainage gravel and medium separation gravel. Fine sand with grain size between 0.1 and 0.25 millimeters, washed and free of clay. A section of plastic pipe, 6 millimeter inner diameter for the outlet. A piece of sheet metal or thick plastic sheet for the diffuser. A drill to make the diffuser holes. A bucket or 2 for mixing, that is everything. Total cost between $30 and $60 depending on where you live and what you already have. The concrete pour takes an afternoon. Curing time is 28 days. During those 4 weeks, a ceramic pot filter can serve as your immediate filtration option, using local clay, sawdust from any woodworking shop, and colloidal silver solution from a health food store. Total cost under $20. After curing, you fill the BioSand filter, run source water through it continuously for 2 to 4 weeks while the biological community establishes, and then test the output with a simple E. coli strip test. After that, the filter runs. It runs when the grid is up. It runs when the grid fails. It runs during boil notices. It runs during the slow-motion infrastructure failure that is already underway in 200 American cities, where water mains installed before World War II are averaging multiple breaks per year. It runs during everything. The only thing it does not do is send you a bill. James Simpson stood at the Thames in 1829 and asked whether sand could clean a city's water. The answer was yes. David Manns stood in his kitchen in Calgary in 1991 and asked whether $60 and a garbage can could give a family clean water without ongoing dependency on any supply chain. The answer was yes. 2 million families across 70 countries have built the answer and are living inside it. The water filtration industry has spent decades asking a different question and a different kind of answer. How do we keep customers paying? Cartridges every 6 months, membranes every 2 years, service agreements, electricity, subscription reminders, regulatory frameworks that require company registration and product certification, ensuring that anything effective and cheap stays invisible, while anything profitable and dependent gets shelf space, advertising, and the quiet endorsement of every plumber and home improvement show in the country. You have spent years inside that system. You have been paying for a dependency that was designed for you, not by you. You have been told, through the complete absence of any alternative being offered, that the only clean water available is the clean water they sell. The BioSand filter is proof that the premise is false. The technology is 200 years old. The household version is 35 years old. The design documentation has been public for 3 decades. The clinical evidence is overwhelming. 2 million installations across 70 countries have not produced a single documented case of a properly built and maintained BioSand filter, failing to do what it was designed to do. The only thing standing between you and water independence is a concrete box, $50 of materials, and 28 days of curing time. What does it mean to have a water source that no supply chain can interrupt? That no utility can control? That no company can hold hostage with a cartridge replacement schedule? That your children and their children could still be drinking from, decades from now, because you spend an afternoon building something that works and keeps working? That is what James Simpson built for London in 1829. That is what David Manns built for $60 in Calgary in 1991. That is what 2 million families quietly built for themselves, without permission, without a product warranty, and without a subscription, in 70 countries across the world. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never sold to you. And now you know why. Food stored without power. Water filtered for $50. One piece left: heat. There is a heater that burns 80% less wood than a fireplace. One armload of sticks fires it in the morning. Your home stays warm for the next 24 hours without you touching it again. It produces less smoke than an EPA-certified wood stove. It costs $200 to build. And in most of the United States, the building code classifies it as an illegal heating device. Not because it is dangerous, because the gas company cannot send you a bill for branches you picked up in your own yard. That is the next video. Click it now.